Find a seat. So the blood's flowing a little bit. We got some examples in our mind. We've got some areas where maybe it's beneficial for us to grow. And today we kind of take last week's biblical foundation and we continue in the Dad Lab. And so we're on page 9. Grab your pen. We've got a few fill in the blanks that we will go through today. And really what I want to hit on the very front end here is this idea of the Dad Lab. We keep calling it that, but our tagline is really important. Our tagline is Forging Today's Fathers. And this imagery and this vocabulary has been chosen on purpose. This idea of forging, actually, I don't know where Brian is, but he helped me kind of navigate this. And as soon as that idea was in my mind, it just made entire sense. Because when you're forging, it means you're doing something kind of on purpose and for a purpose. And forging involves forces. We've got heat. We've got compression, we've got hammering, and all of this to mold a piece of a starting point into something beneficial and usable and practical and strong and powerful. And so this forging process is bringing to bear some of this heat and compression and pounding and hammering onto us as dads so that we are forged into the fathers that God has created us to be. And so this vocabulary and even the imagery has been selected on purpose because that's kind of where we're going as dads. And so what is that all about? What does it mean to forge? Well, here's what I think we start with. As dads, this is your first fill in the blank. Before we can do, we must be. Before we can do, we must be. And so over our next 12 weeks together, we are going to become something. The first thing, we're going to be shaped in order to shape. We're going to be shaped in order to shape. Because here's the truth of the matter, guys. You and I cannot forge something into our children that we do not first have ourselves. Especially when it comes to the foundational character things that we're going to be talking about today. Dads, you know this. You've lived long enough. Our words are hollow if they are not matched by our actions. And no one on earth is better at detecting your hypocrisy than the people that live in your house. And no one on earth is better at detecting my hypocrisy than the people that live in my home. And so we must be shaped ourselves in order to shape something into our kids. We're also going to hammer some things into us and hammer some things out of us. We hammer some things into us and hammer some things out of us. We need the good things hammered in. We need the instructions from God's Word. We're going to have a biblical foundation every single Tuesday when we're here. But then there's some stuff that needs to go. There's some baggage. There's some habits. There's some selfishness. There's some ignorance that needs to get hammered out of us so that we can grow into, we can be forged into the dads that God has designed us to be. And the third then is we're going to apply pressure in the right places. In forging, there's a lot of pressure. And I'll be honest, and I think this is just fair for you to know, over the course of the next 12 weeks, there will be times when we won't feel like doing it. There will be times when I won't want to prioritize setting the alarm clock. There are times where I won't want to do the actions I've committed to in my small group. There are times I won't want to admit my struggle with the guys that I am connected to. There's times when I'm going to be convicted because I'm not measuring up. This group and this content in your small group are not designed to be heavy-handed. It's designed to move us and to motivate us. And it's going to come from guys who have your best interest because you have their best interest in mind. I've got your best interest in mind. You've got my best interest in mind. And their accountability is what's going to apply pressure. So often we teach our kids, you've got to stand up to peer pressure, stand up to peer pressure. I think that's only half the coin. We've got to stand up to the wrong peer pressure, but we've got to be shaped by the right peer pressure. Peer pressure can be really good when it's pointing us and encouraging us and cajoling us in the right direction. And so, yeah, bad peer pressure we stand up to. The good peer pressure in this room, we let that pressure shape us and we let that pressure forge us because we know it's for our good. So what are our 3 foundational kind of characteristics for dads? And they're just here on page 9 and 10. We'll buzz through some scriptures that I think support them, but you see them on the top of your page. Number 1 is integrity. Integrity. Integrity is merely the state of being whole or undivided. I don't know how many of you are math guys or science guys here. The word integer is a whole number. It is undivided. We've spent a bunch of time in the book of Proverbs this year as a church, and there's a bunch of wisdom in the book of Proverbs for men. In fact, the book of Proverbs itself was originally written by a man for a man, by Solomon to his adult son who's stepping into manhood as God has designed it to be. And I know one of our challenges from last week is, what is your manhood resource that you are going to consume? If you haven't decided on that yet, that's okay. Pick Proverbs. If you read a proverb a day until the end of Dad Lab, you'll get through it 3 times. There's a lot of value in marinating ourselves in Proverbs. It's wisdom for manhood. It's wisdom for life. Proverbs 10:9 is one of the famous ones. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. I'm confident that if we went around this room today, each of us could probably give an example of a man we know who failed to walk in integrity and his path was found out. He was found out. Maybe he lost something as a husband. He lost as a dad. He lost as an employee. He lost a position. He lost something because his integrity was compromised. That story is all too common. And when we compromise our integrity, it costs us. Maybe not a lot today, maybe not a lot tomorrow, but after a while, that is a game that catches up with us. We cannot win. To the point where you and I probably even know some guys who it cost them their freedom through incarceration, through a series of integrity compromise. It will be found out. Titus 2, in everything, set them an example by doing what is good. Right? We are doing Dad Lab. We're doing fatherhood. In doing what is good, we show integrity. The word here, everything, is actually a little bit daunting. It means there are no days off from integrity. You don't get to call time out for integrity. There are no pinch hitters. There's no summoning the bullpen. There are no days off. Only you can be the one to demonstrate this level of integrity for your kids. And this is from the moment that your alarm clock rings in the morning until the moment that your head hits the pillow and you fall asleep at night. This is in the mundane and the routine and the repetitive and the big and the fun and the memorable. This is in all of those moments of life. That's what your kids are going to carry with them. Was my dad the same person in public that he was in private? Did his words and his teaching to be match his actions to me? It includes the words we say. It includes the words we don't say. That may be just as important. It also is how we say them. It's also what we choose to consume from entertainment. It involves what we discipline in our kids and how we discipline. We're going to get to that topic in just a couple of weeks. Guys, this example setting of integrity is relentless. It's relentless because it's relentlessly important. Day after day, hour after hour, month after month, over and over again. Look at 1 Timothy 1. The goal of this command is love, which comes from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Here's the thing about a good conscience, guys. Only you know. Only you know. You're the only one who knows your conscience. I don't know your conscience. You don't know my conscience. I can't know your conscience. I legit have no idea how many of us enter this room today with a good and clean conscience. Only you know. And if your conscience is pricked over the course of the Dad Lab, good. You know how I know that? Mine's been pricked a bunch developing this, okay? Rather than shoving that down, rather than avoiding that, let's face it honestly. Let's ask, why is this bothering me? Why is this compelling to me? Why is something nagging at me that I'm not quite getting this right? Let's look at it with sincerity. Bounce it off the guys that are in your group. God is probably teaching you something by that prick, and He's probably teaching us something the way that we need to grow. And that's only going to contribute to our integrity if we grow in this area of having a good and clean conscience. And you know what's not measurable? The impact that has on your kids. You can't measure the impact of a good, clean conscience on your kids. So the first is our integrity. The second, turn the page, is our initiative. Initiative. Maybe the best simple definition of initiative is seeing what needs to be done and doing it. You got to see it, you got to do it. See it and do it. If any of you participated in the All-In study that we've done the last couple of years, you know that this was like the number one word related to foundational manhood, initiative. Initiative might be the second most important characteristic in the life of dads after integrity. Integrity is first, initiative is second. And initiative is required in all these areas of our life. Relationship with our wife, relationship with our kids, in our workplaces, in our finances, how we handle money, how we serve at church, and those different things. Initiative is the seeing and the doing. Look at James 4. I've put it in your booklet. If anyone knows the good they ought to do, the good they ought to do, and doesn't do it, it is sin for him. And in some ways, this initiative word is kind of like conscience that we just brought up. No one else can initiate for you, okay? I can provide some direction. Your buddies in the group can provide some accountability and some encouragement. Your wife can remind you to set the alarm, or my goofy text will remind you to do that. But at the end of the day, guys, it's on us. It's on us. No one else can do it for you. There's an old saying, you've probably heard it. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? All of this stuff can be provided for us, and I can stand up here and kind of passionately talk about it, and your guys can text you, and they can encourage you, and all of those things, but I cannot actually make one decision for anybody else in this room. And you cannot make one decision for anybody else in this room. Initiative has got to come from somewhere inside of us because it matters. Because it matters. And here's the thing about this verse in James. Sometimes we overlook this, but I think it's actually really powerful. When we see God's instructions to us about knowing the good we ought to do and then doing it, it's not just doing or not doing. It actually escalates. It's either obedience or disobedience. Said stronger than that, actually, it's either obedience or it's sin. That's a contrast. That's, the snooze bar, it's no big deal if I get up 15 minutes later. Listen, if we know what we're supposed to do and we don't do it, the Bible calls that sin. This thing just got taken up a whole bunch of more levels because of this biblical instructions about fatherhood are no small matter. When we know it, we are held to that standard. So initiative is going to matter. Maybe one of the best proverbs in the whole Bible is this parable about the ant and the sluggard in Proverbs chapter 6. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. You want to see some good examples of initiative? Here they are. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in the summer and gathers food at harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. The little ant with the little legs that's just diligently and over and over doing the daily things that need to be done is this example of initiative. And while we see this proverb and we often apply it to work ethic, we should. The activities we are supposed to do, storing up provisions in the summer, having enough to eat, clearly there's work ethic involved here. But I think this proverb is way more than just about food. Think about the fatherhood application of this proverb. By engaging in God-directed fatherhood of integrity and initiative, you aren't just storing up food for later. Although, yeah, you want to eat later. You're storing up generational impact for those who will come behind you, some of whom you will never meet, and some of whom will never know your name. That's more than the cheeseburger you're going to eat this afternoon. That's an impact. That's a legacy. The reason my son has the name Jack is because of a great-grandfather that he will not meet this side of heaven. There's a generational impact that I want him to know, that he is part of something that started way before him and will carry on way after him. It's not just the food we're going to eat in a couple of minutes or a couple of days. It's a generational impact that we can leave in our families when we follow this example and when we initiate in the right ways. God promises that the blessing of obedience are to the generations not yet born. Frankly, some of them we might not see. That's pretty cool. That's powerful. To me, that's compelling. It's aspirational. There's our word from last week. Where are we going and why? Is it worth it? And if wisdom says we should initiate about the food we'll eat tomorrow, doesn't it exponentially more talk about how we initiate for generations who are coming behind us? And I think the answer's yes. Colossians 3, whatever you do, work at it. Work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. Once again, there's a work ethic piece here. I think that's important. Getting the job done, we're right to do so. But the immediate context of Colossians chapter 3 is actually all about relationships. In verse 18, it talks about instructions to wives. In verse 19, to husbands. In verse 20, to children. In verse 21, to fathers. And all of a sudden here in 23, we're talking about this work that we're supposed to do with all of our hearts. We're instructed to work at being good fathers. Why? It doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come perfectly to us. We are hardwired to be selfish. We are hardwired to put ourselves first. We need to work. We need to learn. We need to grow in those relationships and the effort that is required for those relationships that are closest to us. And so, yeah, does Colossians and Proverbs tell us we should have a work ethic? Sure. And you should. And when you go to the office today, man, do that. But don't forget, that applies at least as much in your family and in your relationships and in your fatherhood. And then number 3 here is the idea of our example. Our example. We have a phrase for this: more is caught than taught. I didn't make that up. You've heard that 100 times. More is caught than taught. Do our words matter? Yeah. Do our instructions matter? Yeah. Do our directions matter? Yes. But they're only going to have impact if they're matched by our actions. Our actions have to match them. 1 Corinthians 11, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. This is true in the church, yes, but nowhere is it needed more than in the home. In the home, yes, mom has a role. I'm not denying that. Mom's got to be part of this, but she's not here. You are. I am. As dad, we have a calling to follow the example of Christ and to be an example. We follow his example and we bring our kids along with us right behind us because we're setting that example. Your kids want to know what Jesus is like? They're looking at you first. That's terrifying. That's that pressure we were talking about. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. What are we moving toward? We're moving to be more like him. Titus 2, we've been there once, we return to it. Encourage the young men to be self-controlled. That's a good thing. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. Setting them an example by doing what is good. The original instruction here is for a young pastor in a young church, and we should take it that way. But the application from a pastor in a church to a dad in the home is very simple. Very simple. You and I are the first and most important example setters in our homes to our children. Even as you think about it in your own dad, maybe, you can probably think of a couple of things, I hope, that he did well and that you're following in his example. You might also be able to think of a couple of things that, you're choosing not to imitate because maybe dad missed it a little bit on that one. The example factor that God has put into dads in the home is compelling beyond anything that's going to happen here at Spring Creek Church. It's compelling beyond any other male influence that's going to be in the life of your kids. Now, do we need others? Do we need the church? Do we need other adults? Yeah, we do. But if dad is missing this, guys, boy, we are really putting our kids at a significant disadvantage because we're abdicating the role that God has assigned for us. And so the example here is to be, or the instruction here is to be example for our kids, not just an example, but an example in doing what is good. I put a little tweet on your page there. This I read. If you're a Twitter guy and you don't follow Tyler, you probably should. I love what he said here a couple months ago. Dad should be the hype men for our families. Speak life into them. Constantly encourage. Lead them on adventures. Pump your spouse and kids up. Make ordinary things magical. Dance, sing, laugh, race, joke, and play. Family mirror dad's energy. So bring that hype today, men. By the way, We get 18 summers. That's not very many, is it? I think Tyler's tweet encapsulates this idea of integrity, initiative, and example in a really compelling way. And so remember, dads, before we can do, we must be. Before we can do, we must be. And our time together here is about being, becoming, so that we can do the doing of fatherhood. So in just a minute, we'll break up into our groups. You can see the kind of the shaded part there on the bottom of page 10. That's your conversation that you'll go through. Remember our memory verse that we were to learn. Talk a little bit about your manhood resource that you've chosen for the Dad Lab. Talk a little bit about our icebreaker. What area in fatherhood are you looking to grow in? And then I just want to highlight kind of this week's activity for you. If you look at page 11, this one's going to be a little bit more involved than last week. And what I'm encouraging you to do with question 1 and question 2 is to create a time with no distractions and individually ask each of your children the following questions. Now, if you've got a 13-month-old, not sure you're getting a lot of feedback. But even if you've got one that's not in your house anymore, initiate that time. Ask him. Ask her. And can I give you a little bit of instruction that I'm actually first giving to myself? Take their answer at face value and don't argue with them. Don't actually talk them out of the answer that they give you. You may get a great answer. You may get something that you're really proud of. And you may get something that stings a little bit. Let that sting, but let that sting be a motivator. Let that sting zoom you into the question we're about to talk about. What's an area that you need to grow in? And appreciate their willingness to be honest with you because you want to grow. And at the end of the conversation with each of your kids and with each of your wife, letter D, have a little prayer. Thank God for the gift that that child is. Thank God for their willingness to share with you as dad. And pray that you would grow in that area that he has called you in. And since page 11 probably doesn't give you enough space, turn all the way in the back of your book to page 56. Page 56. What I've put in the back of your book, I think actually may be the most important part of this Dad Lab booklet for you. Each and every week you've got half a page here titled Tracking the Wins. This is where you're taking your notes. This is where you're jotting down the things that you're doing and putting into practice. This is where you ask your child, hey, what's a word you would describe me as a dad? And you write it down here. What's an area I can grow as a dad? Ask your wife. This becomes your guide. Mike's little booklet doesn't become your guide. This becomes your guide because this is where you put into practice the things you talk about in your group because you're tracking wins in your house. I got to track wins in my house. You got to track wins in your house. I'm tracking wins with my kids. You got to track wins with your kids. And so this was purposely designed, and we'll reference it each week. This is going to be the go back to resource that you can go back to over and over and over again. So yes, your questions and some space is available on page 11. I think the meat of it is going to show up on page 56. Does that make sense? All right. You guys remember where to go for your groups? If you don't, let me know. I'll help you. By the way, the guy who's the group discussion leader today is the guy who drove the most miles to get here. Thanks for being here. Let's chat it up till 7 o'clock, and then you'll be dismissed. Appreciate you guys.